This is a Shimano Alfine 8-speed. A year ago I opened this hub up and inspected it and switched it to oil lubrication. At that time I made a video showing the play in the pinion shafts, and at that point it had about 3,000 kilometers on it. It now has about 6,000 kilometers on it. Still working fine, still shifting fine. No skipping or missing or anything like that. So we're going to be opening it up again, doing another inspection, and renew the oil lubrication and grease lube the bearings. Okay, so we'll start by removing the cassette joint and the sprocket. Snap ring comes off. The best tool for that is a small flat bladed screwdriver. Okay, so we flipped it over so we have the non-drive side up. We need a 15mm cone wrench and a 17mm open end. Got the cones out of the way. I'll carefully pry out the dust cap. Take the bearing cage out. Still lots of lube in there. Good shape. Get a hold of that rascal. And I'll clean and inspect the cone. Look for any sign of pitting. Looking pretty good. 6,000 kilometers, no sign of pitting or wear or anything. Okay, now to get the internals out of it, we have to flip it over one more time. So we have the drive side up. And we'll remove this shield. Now, this unit screws out in a counterclockwise direction. And sometimes it's a little bit stiff, so we might need to get the tools out. I have done them by hand, but yeah, I need to get the artillery out here. I'll be careful with the tools because it's plastic. We don't want to mar it, so I'm not going to get the hammer on it unless I have to. Rotate it in a clockwise direction. I'll get the channel lock type pliers into the notches, and there it goes. Once you get it started with the tool, you should be able to screw it off by hand, and it's free. Should be able to lift the internals right out of there. Okay, well, the pinion shafts don't seem to have too much more wear than they did last year. just about the same. Apparently whatever wear is there doesn't seem to be causing a problem because the hub is still working just fine. The grease and the oil is kind of combined to create a bit of a goo, but everything's quite clean. I'll take off the snap ring and remove the gear carrier so we can get the drive side bearing race off. The carrier just lifts right off. And then we can clean and inspect this bearing race. It looks good. And we'll check the hub races as well now. No visible pitting here. Just a wear line all the way around, which is what we expect to see. No roughness, everything's smooth. Same with the non-drive side. Looking good. Alright, so we've got the bearing cages and the bearing races and everything all cleaned up, so now we're going to lubricate them and reassemble the internal hub assembly. Now the hub will be getting an oil bath lube, but we're going to grease the bearings with the Shimano Nexus grease, and we're going to pack the ball cage so it's completely full of grease, and then grease the bearing races as well. Okay, now we're ready to assemble it. There's only one way this goes on. There's an alignment tab inside which needs to align with a slot on the shaft. And you need to make sure that the carrier is fully engaged, that the planetaries engage the sun gear. Sometimes it takes a bit of rotating and fiddling to make that happen. You'll know it's there when these roller bearings are completely concealed. We're not there yet. There we go. And the slot for the snap ring is accessible. A snap ring that holds the whole thing together. And there is an up and a down to this thing. In this case it had a blue mark to show the upside. Okay, now you can see there is a little bit of play in the pinion shafts, but that seems to be normal. Those shafts don't actually rotate with the planetary gears. The planetary gears rotate on the shaft, so there's no actual wear between the shaft and that plate, and it doesn't seem to be affecting the operation of the hub any. As I said, there's 3,000 kilometers more on this hub than there was the last time I opened it, so it looks like everything is wearing well. Okay, now we're going to immerse the complete hub internal in ATF. I'm going to fill the canister up until it's immersed to just under the bearing. Let it soak there for a little bit. Okay, we'll let it soak for a few minutes. Take it out and just let it drip for a while. While we prepare the hub. Okay, we've already cleaned and inspected the bearing races in the hub shell. So now we're going to give them a good dose of special Nexus grease. Now for a gear hub, we always refer to the manufacturer's torque specs. And for the lock nut, the torque specification is 25 to 30 Newton meters, which is, you know, getting up there. It's about 250 inch-pounds. But now we need to use a crow's foot attachment, which multiplies the effect slightly. So we're going to go to the low end of that scale. We'll go to 25 Newton meters. Assemble the drive side. Remember, this cap is a left-hand thread, so it will screw on counterclockwise. Just as tight as you can make it, hand tight. Doesn't need to be any tighter than that. Make sure all the parts go back on in the order they came off. Now, this seems to be the part that most people have difficulty with, is putting the snap ring on. But it gets easier with practice. And the right tool for the job is just a small flat bladed screwdriver. Just make sure you hold your hand over it at all times, because if it springs free, it could wind up in a dark corner someplace and never found again. Now, cassette joint. Make sure the red marks are lined up on the cassette joint. And line it up with the red marks on the shifter, lock tab, yellow mark to yellow mark, rotate 45 degrees to the lock position.